There are souls that enter your life not to love you, but to awaken what you have forgotten, the true light of your own being. A narcissist is one of those souls, not in a beautiful sense, but in a karmic one. They come to you wearing a gentle face, a tragic story, and a kind of energy that makes you believe you are meeting a profound soul. But beneath that mask, they are not seeking connection. They are seeking refuge from their own darkness. Jung once said that when a person is too afraid to look into their own darkness, they unconsciously search for a mirror to hold it. And if you are an empath, you are that mirror. They do not truly empathize, they simply reflect your light to hide the emptiness inside them. They mimic your gentleness, your voice, the pain you once shared, not because they understand, but because they crave to borrow the energy their soul lost long ago. But the soul cannot be deceived forever. At some point, the truth rises from the unconscious, their mask cracks, their darkness spills out, and they need somewhere to place the blame. The irony is brutal. They project onto you exactly what they carry: selfishness, numbness, falseness. This is not an attack, it is fear. Because if the darkness lies in you, they never have to confront the decaying part of their own soul. What you experienced was not just a toxic relationship, it was a spiritual exam. This encounter forced you to see the boundaries of your soul, forced you to return to the intuition you had forgotten, forced you to choose yourself before everything inside you dissolved into someone else. The truth is, they were not drawn to you because you were too soft. They were drawn to you because your light shone directly into a darkness they never dared to face. And that is why they want to become you, yet destroy you at the same time. This video will touch the deepest layer of that truth, not only through psychology, but through the language of the soul. Let's begin. Part 1. Why does the narcissist need to wear an empath mask? From the very first moment, in every story between an empath and a narcissist, there is one detail that always repeats itself in a strangely predictable way. From the very first meeting, they appear as if their soul has walked through the same wounds you carry. They look at you with eyes that seem to read what you have never said. They tell you stories about loneliness, hurt, abandonment, and sensitivity. The kinds of stories you believe only deeply feeling souls can speak of. But what you are sensing is not true empathy. It is an artificial resonance, carefully constructed by a soul disconnected from itself. To understand the real reason behind this, we must look at the story from the depth of the soul, the space Jung called the collective unconscious, where all masks, all shadows, and all unconscious contracts are formed. A narcissist has no stable sense of self. Inside them is a very real, very dark void, a separation between soul and ego that they never dare to face. Their insecurity does not lie in fear of being hurt, as they claim, but in the fact that they have no inner center to return to. And when a person has no center, they must borrow one. Borrow it from whom? From souls who carry light. Empaths, intuitive people, emotionally deep individuals who still possess what the narcissist has long lost. This is why they appear with a perfect mask, the mask of understanding, kindness, empathy, vulnerability. Not because they have these qualities, but because they know exactly which energy an empath is most likely to open the door for. They do not choose you because you are weak. They choose you because your soul is open. And when your soul is open, energy flows. And when energy flows, they can plug into a source of light they cannot produce themselves. Their empath mask is not a tool of seduction. It is a survival mechanism. A soul disconnected from itself cannot naturally access light, so it needs a gateway, and that gateway is your emotion. When they share their sad stories, they do not remember them with their heart. They only know you will feel something. When they listen to you, they are not listening with their soul. They are observing your reactions to adjust their persona. When they show gentleness, they are not truly gentle. They are borrowing your image to make you believe you are seeing them. On a spiritual level, they do not enter your life with their heart. They enter with their lack. They recognize something in you they never had, the purity of a soul that can connect, feel, and love. And instead of learning to find that within themselves, they choose to copy it. They choose to play the role of an empath, not because they want to be good, but because it is the only way to access the energy their soul lost long ago. The irony is, you are not drawn to them. You are drawn to your own reflection shining through them. Jung called this anima/animus projection. You see something you long for within yourself reflected through another person, and you mistake it for a soulmate. But in truth, you have simply met an empty mirror. A mirror skilled at reflecting your light, so you do not notice it has none of its own. This is the real reason they must play the empath role. Without that mask, they cannot pass through your energetic gate. Without that mask, they are just a dark soul stumbling into a light, too bright, too real, too powerful to stand before. And without that mask, you would never open yourself enough for them to enter your inner world. Part 2. Why do they both want to become you and destroy you? The most brutal truth in the bond between an empath and a narcissist is not the emotional abuse or the manipulation games. It lies in the unconscious paradox within them. They crave to become you, yet they also wish to eliminate you. You are the mirror they need to feel real, and the mirror that exposes the emptiness they can never fill. This is not intentional malice. It is an unconscious law, like two energy fields colliding and triggering a chemical reaction that cannot be avoided. When an empath loves, they love with their whole heart. When they care, they touch depths others have never known. For the narcissist, this touch feels like a revelation. For the first time, they sense an energy they have never possessed, the warmth of a real soul. But that same moment triggers their most primal fear, the fear that you will eventually see that inside them is nothing but a hollow void. They know that if you truly see their nature, you will walk away, and nothing terrifies the underdeveloped ego more than that possibility. In Jungian psychoanalysis, this is called shadow exposure. Your presence reveals what they have spent their whole life hiding. Your light exposes their darkness. This is where the collision begins. Truth versus illusion. Authenticity versus the ego constructed out of fear and emptiness. Instead of facing that darkness, their instinctive reaction is this. They want to merge with your light by becoming you, copying you, speaking like you, feeling like you, thinking like you, yet at the same time, they resent you, because that light will never be theirs. This is why your happiness threatens them. Your strength makes them feel small. Your truth makes them feel exposed. You are living proof of what they lack. And because they cannot gain it through inner work, they try to gain it through possession. But possession is never enough. No one can steal another person's spiritual essence. So they fall into a loop. The more they want to become you, the deeper they feel their darkness. The deeper they feel their darkness, the stronger their urge to destroy you so they don't have to see it anymore. Unconsciously, they believe that if your light disappears, they will no longer have to confront the truth that their soul has been decaying for a long time. They want you smaller, weaker, exhausted, doubtful, because only when you shrink do they feel large enough. This is not personal cruelty. It is the survival reflex of an ego that cannot coexist with authenticity. Your light opens a door they spent their whole life trying to seal shut. Destroying you is their attempt to close that door again. But this cruel paradox goes even further. They don't just want to destroy you, they also want to keep you beside them. One half of them wants to absorb energy from you, the other half wants to escape the illumination you carry. This is the kind of energy Jung called conjunctio oppostorum, the union of two poles that cannot truly be reconciled. And precisely because of this lack of harmony, the relationship becomes an energetic battlefield. You give from your soul, they receive from their lack. You want healing, they want control. You want truth, they want illusion. The deepest layer of all this is this. The narcissist is not jealous of what you have. They are jealous of who you are. They are not envious of your success, but of your ability to love without fear, to feel without pretending, and to be present without a mask. They want to steal your inner life, the thing they believe, if they could take it, would make them whole. but the soul cannot be copied. Authenticity cannot be borrowed. So their jealousy turns into attack, their admiration into control, and their longing into destruction. Here you can clearly see why they both want to become you and destroy you at the same time. You are the light they crave, and at the same time the mirror reflecting the part of their soul they want to escape. And that is the root of every painful loop you have ever gone through with them. Part 3. When your energy activates their shadow karma, you are not just a victim, you are a catalyst. What most empaths do not know and are never taught is that their presence is not only healing, it is activating. Your light does not only make others feel safe, it also stirs the dark parts inside them. This is not ordinary loving energy, this is archetypal light. The kind of light carried by souls that have moved through many layers of the unconscious and therefore hold a frequency strong enough to awaken parts in others they do not want to touch. And for the narcissist, the part they most refuse to touch is their shadow karma, their primal wounds, their locked soul memories. The shadow wound that Jung described as a beast sleeping in the depths of the psyche. From the very first contact, your energy had already stirred that beast. Not because you intended to, but because your soul carries an opposite frequency. Where you have truth, they have illusion. Where you have connection, they have disconnection. Where you have intuition, they have fear. These two opposing energy fields meet, and the buried shadow in them starts to stir. That is why you once saw such strange moments in their eyes. A flicker of admiration, then a flicker of envy. A gentle look, then a cold, inexplicable distance. A moment of closeness, then sudden withdrawal. They do not understand what is happening, but their soul understands. Your light is calling their darkness out of its cave. When the shadow energy is activated, the narcissist falls into a state of inner instability they cannot explain. They feel seen even when you have said nothing. They feel exposed even though you have not judged them. This creates an unconscious panic. Their soul recognizes that you are not an ordinary source of supply. You are a mirror soul, a spiritual mirror capable of shining into the very parts they want to bury. And so, this idea, very a mirror soul, a spiritual mirror, capable of shining into the very parts they want to bear. And because they do not have a strong enough ego to handle that exposure, they choose the most primitive reaction, to run from their own darkness by pushing it into you. On a spiritual level, this is shadow transference. The darkness they refuse to hold will seek out the nearest place with an open energetic field to take shelter in, and that place is your soul. This creates a strange phenomenon. You start to feel heavy, confused, self-doubting, filled with emotions that, in essence, are not originally yours. This is not weakness. It is unconscious energy absorption that your nervous system is carrying on their behalf. These are the moments when you feel sad for no clear reason, exhausted without knowing why, guilty without a real cause. You do not realize that you are holding the shadow they cannot bear to face. And precisely because you unconsciously become the container for that darkness, they become even more obsessed with you. Their soul knows that only near you do they temporarily escape having to look at their own truth. But the irony is this, that very closeness exposes them even more. The brighter you become, the darker they feel. The more authentic you are, the more false they feel. The more peaceful you are, the more they feel their own chaos. Therefore, that is the only way in to their own chaos. This is when an energetic cycle begins. You activate their darkness. That darkness makes them unstable. Their instability drives them to use masks and control games to try to regain balance. Those games hurt you, and your pain, in turn, inadvertently shines even more light onto them. No one says this out loud, but the truth is, you become the catalyst for their collapse. Not because you want to, but because your soul carries a frequency that forces falsehood to lose its mask. This is exactly why a narcissist is never normal around an empath. Your light does not allow them to sleep peacefully inside their illusion. Your soul stirs their shadow karma. You are not just someone they want to possess, you are the test their soul keeps trying to run from. Part 4. When the shadow is awakened, the narcissist has to attack you to survive. When the light in you awakens the darkness they have buried their whole life, the narcissist does not simply feel uncomfortable, they feel threatened at an existential level. What terrifies them is not you, but what you activate inside them. Truth. The truth that behind the empath mask is an empty soul that does not know how to connect. The truth that beneath all their stories of being hurt is an ungrown ego running from responsibility. The truth that your light exposes the part they have spent their entire life avoiding, and when truth touches them, there is only one reaction arising from their unconscious: attack in order to survive. In Jungian psychology, the moment the shadow is called up is the moment the weakest ego fights back the hardest. When the narcissist feels you see them too clearly, they cannot keep maintaining the illusion, so they must make you doubt your own feelings so that your light dims. They must make you feel guilty so that your heart contracts. Because when your heart contracts, the intensity of your illumination decreases, and they can breathe a little longer inside their familiar illusion. Their attacks are not aimed at you as a person, but at making you pull your energy back, because only when you shrink can their darkness go back to sleep. What hurts empaths the most is exactly this paradox. The more genuine you are, the more they resist. The more you love with your whole heart, the more they try to confuse you. The more you speak truth, the more they twist it into an accusation. They have to do this not because they want to win against you, but because they cannot allow their mask to fall under the strength of your light. Because once the mask falls, they will have to face the truth that their whole identity was built not from soul, but from fear, wounds, and the hunger to be validated. The narcissist attacks you because they do not have the strength to face themselves. And because they cannot face themselves, they must find somewhere to dump their darkness, and that place is you. You become a temporary container, the mirror they both need and resent. They need you, because only when you absorb their chaos do they feel some relief. They resent you, because it is precisely your light that makes them feel exposed. This is not love. This is the survival reflex of an ego afraid of being revealed. They attack you so they do not have to see their own darkness reflected in your eyes. And so every argument, every attack, every blame cycle comes down to one thing. You have seen too much. When an unripe soul senses that truth is closing in, they will choose to attack the one who carries that truth rather than ever face it. This is why you feel that the more you love them, the more cruel they become. The more you try to understand them, the more they force you to doubt yourself. The closer you get, the further away they seem, not because you are wrong, but because you are so right that they cannot bear it. At the deepest level of the soul, their resistance to you is their resistance to the truth your light has unintentionally summoned. You do not create chaos in them, you simply reveal what was already there. And because truth is the most dangerous enemy of an ego built on illusion, they are forced to attack you as a form of spiritual survival. You are not seen as the enemy because you are bad, but because your light leaves their darkness with nowhere to hide. That is the true nature of their attack, not hatred, not pure malice, but fear. Fear of the truth your soul brings, fear of the light your heart radiates, fear that if they stand before you for too long, they will have to admit that their entire life has been nothing but a mask. And to them, that is even more terrifying than the darkness itself. Part 5. When you go silent, they collapse. The truth they fear most is not that you leave, but that they lose the right to touch your soul. The silence of an empath is never just the absence of words. It is the withdrawal of energy, of light, of life, that you once unconsciously poured into a soul that did not know how to feed itself. On the surface, others might think you are avoiding, letting go, or seeking peace. But on a deeper energetic level, your silence is a spiritual event. It closes the door the narcissist once depended on to sustain their illusion of self. When you become silent, the only truth left in front of them is themselves, and that is what they fear most. The narcissist is never truly afraid of losing you. They are afraid of losing the version of themselves they created through you. As long as you still love them, they have somewhere to dump their darkness. As long as you still react, they still feel powerful. As long as you still explain, cry, get angry, and keep trying, they know they still exist in your inner world. But when you go silent, every unconscious supply line is cut off. You are no longer a mirror, no longer a refuge, no longer a stage for their ego to perform on. You disappear from the role they thought only they controlled. And when you disappear from that role, their soul falls into a state of weightlessness. In Jungian spirituality, this is called ego disintegration, the breaking apart of the ego when there is no one left to maintain the false image. Their sense of self was always based on reflection, not on independent existence. So when you are silent, they do not just lose you, they lose the self you had been maintaining for them. And the most devastating part is this: they do not know how to live without someone to reflect them. Their soul is like a mirror left in a dark room. With no one looking into it, it becomes meaningless. With no one to reflect, it loses its function. Without your light, there is nothing left but emptiness. Your silence forces them to face what they have been running from all their life, the void within themselves. It is not mere loneliness. It is a sense of non-existence. With no one left to blame, they are forced to confront responsibility. With no one left to manipulate, they are forced to see their own powerlessness. With no one left to perform for, they are forced to face the true self they have always feared. And this is precisely when the collapse begins. They realize that no matter how strong the illusion they built, it can no longer hide the truth that without you, they do not know who they are. But here lies the paradox. It is precisely your silence that makes them want to come back the most. Not because of love, but because their ego is slowly disintegrating. They begin to check on you, watch you, look for any sign that you still have feelings. They cannot bear the idea that you are no longer their familiar energy source. What they fear is not that you will forget them. They fear that you will no longer be the mirror that sustains their false self. That is why, when you are silent, they feel erased from reality. They were always used to dealing with anger, arguments, confrontation. Those things still kept them inside the story. But silence is something they have no skill to face. It is the sign that you have withdrawn what they used to survive on. Your silence is a space in which their darkness can no longer hide. With no one left to dump it onto, that darkness starts running wild inside them. They feel heavy, empty, irritable, restless, even afraid. The emotions they once threw at you now return to them with double intensity. Jung called this shadow return, when the shadow comes back to its true owner. This is why, after no contact, narcissists often fall into strange phases. They may be excessively cheerful, then suddenly crash. They may find someone new, then suddenly miss you. They may appear calm, then secretly stalk you in desperation. None of this happens because you are special in a romantic sense, but because the energy they once borrowed has been pulled back to its true source. The truth is, you never destroy them with anger or revenge. You collapse their artificial structure with a single act, pulling your light back to its rightful owner, yourself. Silence is when your soul is no longer being siphoned by them, and that leaves their darkness with nowhere to hide. They do not fall apart because you left, they fall apart because they have nowhere left to run. Part 6. The moment you rise from silence, when your soul steps off the stage, they no longer have the right to script. There is a moment in an empath's journey that the narcissist never believes you can reach. The moment you rise from silence, not with hurt, but in a completely new state, awakening. It is not rebellion, not anger, and certainly not a hope that they will realize anything. It is the moment your soul steps out of the role you once unconsciously accepted. This is exactly the point Jung calls an individuation breakthrough, when the true self moves beyond the shadow of all unconscious bonds. And for the narcissist, this is the final collapse, not of you, but of them. You rise not because you are stronger than before, you rise because the energy that used to be drained from you has returned to its rightful place. Everything they once used to make you doubt yourself, gaslighting, conditional affection, punishing silence, blame, no longer works. Not because you have learned to fight it, but because your soul no longer fits the old energetic rhythm. You are no longer their mirror. You are no longer the stage for their ego. You are no longer the place where their darkness can be dumped. When the energetic connection is withdrawn, the bond dissolves on its own. This is not a victory. It is the natural separation of two souls that no longer share the same frequency. And the strangest thing is this. In the moment you stand up, you do not feel like you have won. You only feel light, a lightness so uncanny it is almost frightening, as if you were walking through air after years of wading through mud. That lightness does not come from their change, but from the fact that you are no longer carrying their karma on your shoulders. You begin to realize things your heart was once too noisy to hear, that most of the pain you felt was not really yours, that the self-doubt inside you was their echo, that your exhaustion was the result of carrying their darkness that they refused to face. When all of that falls away, your soul is freed from the unconscious contract you both once signed with energy, not with words. From their perspective, this moment feels like a betrayal, not because you betrayed love, but because you betrayed the role they assigned to you. They once believed you would never leave the position of healer, the patient one, the one with unconditional empathy. But empaths only live in that role when they have not yet seen the truth. When truth has arrived, when the darkness is clearly lit, when the soul has reclaimed its center, the role ends. And in that instant, they no longer have the right to control the story. Your awakening makes them lose direction, because in their energetic system, everything has always revolved around maintaining your dependence. When you are no longer dependent, that structure collapses. Your silence once drove them into panic, but you standing up, walking away with calm, makes them lose their center completely, because your calm is proof that they can no longer touch you. Once you no longer react, they understand that every weapon they once used has become meaningless. But the most beautiful thing about the moment you stand up has nothing to do with them. It has to do with you, because standing up here is not standing up against them, it is standing up to return to yourself. This is when you feel something very strange. The pain that once brought you to your knees no longer holds power. The questions that once haunted you, why are they like this? Was it my fault? Am I not enough? Now dissolve like mist. You no longer need answers, because you now clearly see that those questions belong to their darkness, not to your soul. The moment you stand up is the moment the soul contract between you and them is completed. Not a contract of love, but a contract of awakening. A soul appears to teach you boundaries, self-respect, intuition, and your own light, not through love, but through the absence of love. The narcissist never knows they are teaching you, but your soul does. And when the lesson is complete, the attachment falls away on its own, like an old skin that no longer fits. You rise not as a warrior, but as someone who has returned from a long dream. No need to prove anything. No need for anyone to understand. No need for anyone to apologize. Your soul needs only one thing: to live without having to shrink itself to keep someone else intact. Part 7. When you walk away, their shadow karma rises, the collapse they hide from the world. The moment you walk away, the first thing the narcissist loses is not you, but the only mirror that ever made them feel like they were somebody. They may laugh, fall in love with someone new, brag, or appear calm, as if nothing really matters. But that is only a thin layer of water covering the mouth of a deep well. The truth lies at the bottom, where the darkness begins to rise, quietly but violently, like a karmic current they cannot control. Because when you step out of the story, they do not just lose a relationship, they lose the only place that has ever held the part of their soul they never wanted to face. What they fear most has never been losing you, but losing the version of themselves reflected through you. When you are no longer there, the mask they used to live behind begins to crack from the inside. An ego built on possession has no idea how to function when there is no one left to cling to. You were once their energetic anchor, their emergency exit, the container into which they poured layer after layer of darkness without having to take responsibility. When that door closes, the darkness returns to its true owner. Jung calls this the return of the repressed, the return of parts that have been suppressed for so long that, when they surface, they shatter every psychological structure the ego relied on to survive. This is the phase where the narcissist often sinks into extreme cycles, at times inflating themselves to the highest degree, at times falling into the depths of despair, at times putting on the image of a winner, at times secretly tracking your every trace. This oscillation is not mere moodiness. It is the consequence of losing the secondary nervous system they once plugged into you. They do not know how to regulate their emotions, because throughout the time they were with you, they used you as their emotional regulation system. When you disappear, they are forced to face the emotional waves they had been throwing at you for months or years. What they never say out loud is this: your silence throws them into a void that even a new relationship cannot fill. A new person, new supply, new attention, all of it is just a thin bandage covering a wound that is still bleeding inside. None of those people carry your light. None of them reflect back to them so deeply that they feel both seen and afraid of being seen. None of them hold a spiritual frequency strong enough to stir the darkness they are trying to lock at the bottom. That is why they replace quickly, but also grow bored quickly. They run away, yet secretly look back. They seem fine, yet are haunted by images of you truly vanishing from their life. But the strongest rise of shadow karma happens in the nights no one sees. When the outside noise dies down, when there is no one left to blame, no one to perform goodness for, no one to push energy onto, they are forced to face what they have feared all their life, the emptiness within themselves. With no one to reflect them, they feel invisible. With no one to cling to, they feel like they are dissolving. Without your light, they realize they have nothing left to shine on. They begin to feel as if they do not exist, not in the physical sense, but in the sense of the soul. An unripe soul does not know who it is when it stands alone. What they don't realize is this: what is collapsing is not love, but the illusionary structure they built using the light they borrowed from you. Your departure is like someone unplugging the power from a house lit entirely by LED lights. Everything that once glowed so brightly suddenly falls into darkness, exposing every crack they worked so hard to hide. And when those cracks appear, they have no choice but to interpret it as betrayal, even though the truth is simply that your soul has chosen to return to its rightful place. The irony is that they may hate you for rising, but deep down, they know it is precisely that moment that cost them the only mirror that ever reflected their true self. You are not the light they despise. You are the light they know they will never be able to touch, and that is why their shadow karma rises the strongest. Not when you stay, but when you walk away, because you are no longer a place for them to hide. In the end, what you realize is not how deeply the narcissist hurt you, or how skillfully they manipulated you, or how many times you forgave, hoped, and shattered again. What you realize when you finally pause at the end of this road is that the entire story was never truly about them. It has always been about you. About the part of your soul that opened too wide, loved too deeply, trusted too easily, about the boundaries you never knew you needed, about the intuition you once heard but didn't dare to believe, about the light you possessed but handed to someone else to hold, and about the strength you could not see until everything around you collapsed, leaving you no choice but to look within. A narcissist is not a test of love. They are a test of awareness. They enter your life not to complete you with tenderness, but to reveal the fractures you never knew existed within your soul. They bring you to your knees so you can learn how to stand. They make you lose yourself so you can learn how to reclaim your being. They break your heart so you can learn not to place it in the hands of those who cannot hold it. And they shatter you so your inner world can be rebuilt at a higher level, one you would never have dared to reach without the brutal touch of darkness. And when you rise beyond them, what you reclaim is not just peace. It is soul sovereignty. It is the clarity to see everything as it truly is. It is the sharpened intuition no one can make you doubt again. It is the self-respect you will never trade away. It is the inner voice you have finally recovered. And it is the light you now hold with both hands, no longer letting others define it. Use it as a refuge for their shadows, or slip into your soul behind painted masks. They may never change. They may carry their old cycles for years. They may go from person to person, repeating the same performance, hoping someone will repair the fragment of their soul they refuse to face. But you, who has passed through them, who has risen from the ruins, who has walked through your own inner tunnel of darkness, you are no longer there. You are on a different plane. The plane of someone who now knows how to love themselves first, who sees darkness without fearing it, who understands that light is not something to prove, but something to live in truth. And that is what makes this journey whole. You did not leave the narcissist because they were unworthy, but because your soul no longer aligned with where they stood. You walked away not because you were weak, but because you had outgrown the role you once played. You stayed silent not because you lost, but because you rose above the game they were forever trapped in. You stood up not to retaliate, but to become yourself in your fullest form. This is the real victory. The truth you found within, the peace that needs no witness, and the light that no shadow from your past can dim. They appear to awaken you, and you left to complete yourself. And as you continue walking this new path, lighter, deeper, brighter, you will understand that the entire journey was never a tragedy, but a rebirth without noise, without declarations, without needing to prove anything. It is simply the full presence of a soul that has walked through darkness, seen itself within it, and emerged carrying a light no one can ever take away. That is the true ending, and also the beginning your soul has been waiting for all along.